All right, let's move into our first discussion of the day now. The People's Bank of China and the Central Bank of Nigeria have endorsed an agreement on currency exchanges.
The Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele endorsed the agreement for Nigeria. That agreement, coming 2 years after negotiations, will ensure availability of Chinese and Nigerian currencies to businessmen from both nations. Now, the deal is worth $2.5 billion and is valid for 3 years, but can be extended upon mutual consent.
For people in Nigeria who have business in or with China, there is now direct access to yuan. Previously, they would have to convert their naira to dollars or a similar currency and then swap it for yuan. And that is a cumbersome process, right, for those that have traveled to places like that. So it should make business easier, it should make trading easier, and then it should also ensure greater liquidity of the currency that Nigerians are increasingly beginning to use, just because we are getting deeper ties with China. So,
all right, it should make business easier between the two economies on the surface value. That's what it is, but a lot of people still have lots of concerns about that. We have joining us Mukhtar Mohammed. He's a financial analyst and he is the CEO of Asha Dynamic Solution. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Good morning.
We still have with us Dr. Daniel Kere of the University of Lagos. We're still keeping him for the next discussion. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, but they need to know that I'm not an economist. Who will be looking at it philosophically.
Yeah, we'll be looking at it from all sides. Now, let me start with you, Mukhtar. The beautiful ideas bringing up the reasons for the need for a currency swap between Nigeria and China, and all of that. But a lot of analysts still have a lot of concerns when it comes to the volume of trade, the imbalances here and there. Talk to us about that.
Well, that is expected. For me, it's a good deal. If you're having this currency swap with the second largest economy in the world. And remember, this is not the first time. We are not the first nation. Other developed economy and even developing economy have these deals in SWIFT. The only, for me, I think we should have done it earlier on. And I think the Chinese are smarter because they realize the stability in our currency rate now. Our oil price has gone up. There will not be any system collapse. They've looked at our reserve. And that's why they were able to remember this deal was supposed to have been implemented 3 years ago. And at that time, we had the currency crisis, the recession, the fall in oil price. And that was when Nigeria should have taken advantage of that. That would have made sense. But for now, it's better late than never. One key thing that people are not looking is going to reduce the pressure on the dollar to the naira exchange. And knowing fully well that most of these transactions of dollar to naira exchange are being embarked upon by Nigerians that are doing business in China. So that's going to
make us
reduce
understand this very clearly in a way that the ordinary man like myself cannot really understand. Are we saying that we're taking the dollar out of, just cutting it out as a medium of exchange? Is that what is going on right now?
No. What's going on is that, normally the global medium of exchange is the dollar.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so when you want to do business in China, you have to go and get the dollar. You take it to China, and then they give you this Chinese yuan. So what the government is saying now, you could take naira to China, directly, and then you now exchange it and get the Chinese yuan, and you do your business. Now, the Chinese that is coming to Nigeria can come with the yuan and exchange it and get the naira and does business directly. It's done all over the world. In some major economies, they've gone into what we call currency swap deals. So it's a good deal that does not indulge so much pressure, because the pressure most time comes from the exchange, because we are out of now about 80% of our product are being imported from China. So that will already bring down the pressure on the exchange rate of the dollar also. Then again, when you talk of volume of trade, I think it's called for concern. But ask me which country Chinese are not the more volume of trade. Remember, of recent, the president of United States, Donald Trump, was also complaining about.
31 other countries
complain about it. But the Chinese seem to know their onions. They seem to know what to do. They seem to get, especially in the terms of going into developed nations like Nigeria. And remember that about over 70 to 90% of the bilateral agreement that this present administration has are with the Bank of China, and China are going to do a rail network. They are going to do a construct our roads and everything. So when you look at that, that was going to bring stability. Already stability we enjoy in the currency market. We are sure that this is going to be stable, and that could find out from the agency like Moody and saying that, oh, we are stable.
Okay, Dr. Kerry, let me come to you on this. Now, a lot of Nigerians feel that China's new influx, continuous, in fact, aggressive influx, deliberate influx into economies like Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and then some other, is a way of economic colonialism.
Well, interestingly, it's not only the developing or the less developed countries that China is actually doing that. So even US is equally experiencing that. So if US could go through that, then I wonder why you feel concerned so much about economies like Nigeria. Now, it is unfortunate for China, they believe that they couldn't key into the events during the era of colonial intrusions. But
So this is
now,
their
yeah,
time.
but now they have a superior way of doing that. You find them establishing all manner of institutions here and there. In Nigeria here, they have the Confucius Institute. I mean, they have one of it at the University of Lagos, and I'm sure they have it in different other countries in Africa. What is it about? It's about the Chinese worldview. It's about the Chinese culture. It's about Chinese language. It's about Chinese, practically everything. Confucius happened to be one of those philosophers of repute, that gave China that background of, the kind of, the life thoughts they now have. And projecting that particular, institute is a way of trying to penetrate practically every other world. So
yeah, but I
it's not
doubt if
surprising.
anyone would have any issues with wanting, with any country or culture wanting to project itself. But the real problem now would be in the course of that projection, will you be eroding everything Nigeria?
That will be left to you. That will be left to Nigeria. If you choose to remove yours and decide to embrace everything China, then it is left to that country. So what they are doing is a very diplomatic way of doing it. In business, they are well established, and they are moving at a rate that is alarming, worldwide. So now backing it with the cultural aspect tells you that they are up to something more than economy. So everyone has to watch out for that. And unfortunately, too, many of these countries do have a single language. Nigeria in particular, we do have a single language that you can say, okay, the only one we embrace is foreign language. We don't have any of our indigenous language. But in China, I'm very convinced that they speak the same language.
It's just their Mandarin.
Are you getting it? So there is a force of unity around them, which a lot of us
Although
don't
they have very little dialects that are different.
They are very much. It's just like within Yoruba land, you find all manner of little distinctions, but they can all understand themselves. I think that's the situation. Really.
Okay, now Mukhtar, let me bring you in. It seems that China is really very strategic in what it's trying to do, not only with Nigeria, but other countries that it has gone into this currency swap with, including the US, countries like South Africa, even the UK. And China is looking at actually devaluing its currency so that its exports can be a lot cheaper. How does that benefit Nigeria?
Well, the way it benefits other developed countries is going to benefit Nigeria. The long-term picture or the short-term...
Considering the fact, sorry to cut you in there, considering the fact that Nigeria, like we established earlier, really does not have finished goods, really, in quantum that you'd want to export to. We're totally import
Just
dependent.
like the doctor said, that also depends on us. The short-term goal, it looks good, but for the long time, we'll begin to see how we can incorporate these Chinese companies to stay here in Nigeria and do business and create more employment for us, then be able to monitor them very well. Because even if you go to the place like United States of America and another developed economy in the world, we realize that 90% of their product comes from China, and make sure they have those things. Yes, you go there, you look at it, even the biggest telecom, the biggest phone
but
manufacturer.
Many of them are American companies
manufacturer,
in China.
Yes, the iPhone all comes from China. Taken to US. There's no place in the United States that they manufacture the iPhone. It was derived from China. Number one, cheap labor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cheap labor in China. And then they have a good communication link. Sometimes even the phone companies in America, their call center are received in China because of cheap labor. So Chinese...
And then the expertise and skill.
Yes, Chinese are already there. Even you look at the 10 best university in the world, you have about 2 Chinese university there. So China's are really doing business. So it's not left for us to begin to see how we can really diversify and indigenize our economy and create that ownership mentality of our economy by doing business with these Chinese people and doing it very well. We have small-scale businessmen, SME, that are doing business with the Chinese people, and they are doing well. But those, if they give them the kind of leverage that the Chinese government gives to their own SME, they may begin to replicate such things venture here. But the challenge we have is that cost of borrowing here is high compared to cost of borrowing in China. Even our own government are even doing business with China because the cost of borrowing is about 2%. Even doing borrowing here in Nigeria is even difficult for the government, so the government is even borrowing outside. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in Nigeria. We shouldn't just feel comfortable with the swap deal and just sit down and allow business, because before we know it, all our business will be taken over by Chinese, even the ones that we even think we could be able to own here in this country.
And, well, just a little addition to that, by way of question. Now, we are doing currency swap. Now, is that going to change the value of the currency? Because if
that's the value of the naira.
Yeah, for instance, a dollar goes for about 365.
Yeah.
Now, if we're not dealing with China using their own currency, what will be the rate of exchange?
Which is one of the
this
questions
going to be
that
at the
really
value
asked.
of the dollar? But the difference is that we will now be having direct access to
yuan.
Chinese
Mukhtar is here, who is an analyst in that regard, because
the point
is we have
we've
always dealt with the dollar. In fact, with countries that are not American, as far as it's not Nigerian, we deal in the dollar. Even with other African countries, we deal in the dollar.
Even within Nigeria, you do some transactions.
But now that the yuan is coming on board, how would it affect the rate of the dollar in that regard?
Look, number one, it depends on the way we're doing business.
Okay.
That is one. We need to look at what are the agreement put in place. For now, I think there's going to be a fixed rate between the exchange rate between the Chinese yen and the naira. There's going to be, CBN has not come out clear. Remember
so it's not going to be dependent on the volume of trade between the two countries?
No. Okay. Because CBN hasn't come out with details, because they've already mandated 2 banks, the Zenith Bank and the First Bank, that have administrative offices in China. And they are telling those banks to upgrade to become like a full operative bank, full-fledged bank in China. So what happens is that sometimes it's going to create that exchange rate stability. Now, for the long term, we might eventually, that's why I say the short term, that's what is great. For the long term, we'll begin to see that, the fact of Nigeria is that we try to force things. It's supposed to be market forces.
Yes.
Demand and supply. Once the rate whereby we ask for the dollar keeps going down, then the exchange rate will drastically begin to come down on its own freely. That's how it's supposed to be. Then, again, let me tell you, the challenge we have in this exchange rate stability that the CBN has been monitoring, the 2 major areas that really takes the exchange rate volatility is in our importation of goods, which are 90% coming from China. And then secondly, our importation of petroleum products. Now, we seem to be addressing one part of it.
Yes.
Now, the second part of it is what, if addressed, you see that convergence that we're saying, there won't be the parallel market and the secondary market comes together. We'll have that convergence as once we are able to handle these 2 very key economic indices.
Now that you talk about that, the 41 items that have been delisted from Forex by the CBN, which of course the CBN has said is part of the reasons why we're recording, progress in our economic growth. Will things remain the same? Because most of these goods really are from China anyway.
See,
so how's that going to rub off on these 41 items?
It has to do with, like I said, they've not come out clearly to give us all these details. It's just a swap deal that was just announced, and they said, okay, you could use this. So we are waiting for the details. The settlement banks are going to come out. You're going to see the exchange rate. Like when you go to the bank, you see the exchange rate of the dollar to the naira. And we're going to see all these things play out. We're going to see, as time goes on, we're going to see the technicality of this agreement. CBN has not come out to give us detail of the technicality of this agreement. Remember, even the 2-fledged banks that are not going to take up until about 2 months or 3 months from now. So they're still working out. It's not something that has come up immediately. It's an agreement that has been signed. But I think for now, even the Nigerian, the exchange between the rate, the China rate, and the yuan and the naira has not officially taken place. The agreement is on ground. So when we have this 2-fledged bank comes in play, then they begin to tell us. Then we begin to see. in terms of demand and supply, just like he rightly pointed out, in terms of volume of trade, we Nigeria will demand more of the Chinese yuan than the Chinese. That could now create an imbalance. But again, we must not forget that 90% of our construction of our infrastructural development being empowered by China. So you could use one area to say, okay, in terms of the SMEs and other small businesses, China may be gaining the upper hand. But when it comes to infrastructural development, which is large scale, which has to do with projects that are going to run for about 6 to 7 to 10 years, then at the long picture, we have to have that stability.
Okay. Dr. Kerry, you want to say something?
Yeah, my worry, I feel strongly that we'll be running more to China. Because
than China running to
yes,
us?
That is what I'm suspecting. Because with this arrangement, you know, you're going to find Chinese goods flooding the market more than ever before, you know. And then I don't know if we have such, you know, I don't know if we have such, you know, serious strategic policies that will, you know, take care of this environment. Because a situation whereby all you do is siphon the resources from the country and without creating any form of employment, you know, because if these people have their plants here, if they have their various companies here, obviously you are going to employ Nigerians and you are going to create wealth as well. But a situation whereby all they do is coming, they get contracts and go, then the next thing we import, obviously, is going to be to our disadvantage.
All right, let me stay with you, Dr. Keret. Now, United States has been Nigeria has been the major African trading partner with the United States.
Yes.
And when it comes to the biggest market, Nigeria is the market when it comes to Africa.
Certainly.
Now, the yuan coming on board, do you think the United States is going to be very concerned where they're going to change tactics with the way they do business with Nigeria?
Even before now, already there is jittery everywhere, with Chinese men, you know, going everywhere as far as United States. You know, even to the point of the oil business, you know, they are all over. So that has already sent jittery everywhere. So with this one, obviously, is going to be affected. There's no two ways about it. But again, the president was in the United States not too long ago, and I listened to part of his discussion. I don't know if before then they discussed the issue of the oil trade between Nigeria and the U.S., because U.S. used to be one of our biggest allies.
Well, it doesn't seem they discussed that much,
So,
because the president was asked about, you know,
so I expected that
he
would have
said,
been one of
you know,
the
we
issues.
cannot
His
tell the
response-
U.S. what to do.
His response didn't satisfy Nigerians.
Are you getting it? So if you didn't table the issue of America backing off oil and the rest of it, then it was bad enough. Now, look at it from the point of view of China now coming into the scene, you know, without necessarily going through the dollar, then we have direct,
Exactly.
you know, it's certainly going to affect.
And that would have been the hook line where the president would have made America understand, well,
yes, indeed.
There's an alternative in the East,
are
so
aware.
you can start dealing
You
with
see,
us in oil right now.
The way the United States work, their eyes are everywhere because their business is actually outside. Much of their businesses are outside. So much of what you find as the world police is not because they are so interested in your security. They are out to protect their interest. It is the American interest that is paramount, and that is what they are fighting. So every other thing that they would do is always geared towards securing that interest. So they look out for every other economy where their business interest is. Now, that issue was not tabled. Today, China, Nigeria have been able to come up with this position, even though we are yet to get the details. But the literal understanding is that we will now have direct access to Chinese whatever with the Nigerian naira, and China in the same manner with the Chinese. Yeah, so it's going to certainly affect, you know, the
and don't forget that
the
AU headquarters in Addis Ababa is
was totally funded by China.
By the Chinese.
China is very good at that.
Funded by China.
So they're not playing at all. They're not playing. They know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Another issue of concern was that in the AU headquarters, there were reports that the place was bugged at the time by China, where every discussion at every nook and cranny of the AU headquarters, China had access to everything.
It doesn't matter whether they bug or not. The truth is that whatever discussions they have will surely be at the top post of the Chinese. So you don't need to bug that to get to know what is happening. You know, does AU discuss secret issues? So I do not think that.
So the thing is, in as much as we want to remember that it was after the president visit that this swap deal came in. So
true.
maybe if that deal has come in before them, Donald Trump that we know would have said his dissatisfaction with that, and that.
But Nigerian president
then that maybe the Nigerian president was not satisfied with the outing with the U.S. president, and so it's like, look, it's time we turn
no, but
the direction of
China. This negotiation has been on.
It's been on like 2 years
certainly,
now.
Mukhtar, and certainly, Mukhtar, the president is aware of some of this signings and all of that would happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months.
In the first industrial revolution that we have, it was trade by barter.
Yes.
The second industrial revolution we had was trade by countries by countries. The third industrial revolution we have now, who's playing off and moving to the fourth industrial revolution, is now between trade between individuals and individuals, or individuals and countries. Now, where does this have to put the Nigerian businessman, or what he was trying to say, that maybe before we will have the Chinese flooding the market?
Yes.
Now, there are a lot of indices that will play out now. The cost of producing those things in Nigeria and the cost of producing it in China. Then that's where the infrastructural deficits come to play. So once you have the infrastructure, even the Chinese themselves will easily make more money by just bringing in their own the spare part here for you to assemble and do all the nets and pay all the workers, and they want to do it like that. But when you look at the cost of producing of those things here in Nigeria, because of power, because of road network, because of communication,
other infrastructure, warehousing, security.
So you won't be surprised seeing those things until we begin to put those things in place. And that is why we are bringing the Chinese also too, to put those things in place. Now, U.S., for the first time the president visited the United States of America, he went there with politicians. The second time the president visited the United States of America, that shows that he has learned something. He went there with businessmen.
Yes.
He went, Aligo Dangote was there, and some other businessmen were there. Even the emir was even upset that, Emir Sanusi Lamido, that there was a meeting between the World Bank and that Nigerians leaders were supposed to attend. They didn't attend.
Yes.
That's a story from that day. Remember, that was we, the financial guys, were crying out the last time the president embarked upon a visit. Then the president of Kenya, when Barack Obama was visiting Kenya, invited even Nigerian businessmen like Aligo Dangote and co to be there. While we that were doing business, our own president was went there with politicians. So I think the president is learning. There could be a lot of deals, business, like I said, is going to be between individuals and individuals. Then the country, in any country, what the government does these days is regulatory. Make sure that good products that are not harmful are brought into this country. That's why the American government cannot do anything about. You can see it even when he was trying to do some bilateral remain, he didn't have that issue to do with Mexico. Even if he was telling them that the car manufacturer people, most of the car manufacturers in America have been done in Mexico because of cheap labor.
Yes.
He didn't have that problem with them. He had to say, no, we exempt Mexico. So we need to begin to play the business. Unfortunately, what we have in Nigerians are that we have people that goes to power in any form of leadership that have never been involved in any running of any business. So they don't have that business.
And it's all politics all the way.
It's all politics.
Talking about Lamido Sanusi, former CBN governor, there are reports that he actually set aside 10% of the CBN's forex reserves into the dollar reserves, that is.
Yeah.
What was that supposed to help us achieve?
You see, we need to have foresight.
Yeah.
Like he said, the Chinese, like Doctor said, the Chinese,
they are strategic.
They are strategic. At that time, we looked at the volume of doing business. Remember, when Sanusi Lamido Sanusi did this at that time, was when we had the challenge with the American government saying they are no more buying our oil.
Yeah.
And Chinese became our major partners. So he began to set aside that 10%. So now, that will not create any imbalance in the system.
Okay.
We've seen that means if you demand for you remember when you had the dollar crisis, you demand for dollar, you cannot use your card to get dollar here. And so we are going to begin to see whereby Nigerians can begin to do business. And it's not only in the area of trading and even in social investment.
Okay.
Like education. Some Nigerians are now taking their children to China to study. Because going forward, Chinese seems to be one of the world superpower. Let's forget about the politics in it that they are the second largest economy in the world. When you look at it, in reality, they are the first largest. They are the largest economy in the world.
Big market.
Yeah, Xi
largest market.
Jinping is the most influential person.
And you can see Chinese
So
are
that
even moving.
must mean something.
Politically, they are even
Yeah.
moving. They want to create stability. They are not saying that now they are not creating like a monarchy. The president of China is going to be there, no term. So,
Exactly. He will be there
so
for
they are,
life.
they are looking at that.
All right, we have to round off now.
That
Dr.
is a
Ekere.
very strategic arrangement.
What's the way
because
forward?
Truly, when you look at, even leadership is crucial to development. And much of it is that because of our Western orientation, we tend to look at democracy as if it is something that is tied to development. And when you look at those countries that are actually making wave, you need to ask yourself, is it through a democratic process that they have actually attained what they have? Because we find politicians singing a song that the worst democracy is better than any other whatever.
Than the best military.
But the truth is that what is critical to development is leadership. It's not about the
A
democratic
leadership that
and in any
reflects
case,
the peculiarity of your
but in any
environment
case,
and your
are we
needs.
really democratic? How many of us will allow our 18-year-old children to take decisions that will not have any impact, any influence?
Well,
so you find that challenge. Now, on this issue of currency swap and the rest of it and doing business, Nigeria need to, they need to go back to the table and begin to look at strategic arrangements on how to curtail what will eventually take place. Otherwise, at the end of it all, you are going to find, and regulatory measures must be taken with respect to standards. Chinese are equally very notorious
When
for
it comes
that.
to cheap
We need to be very careful
the
about
standard.
it. But they can manufacture at any kind of quality, depends on your interest. So our businessmen need to equally be cautioned on this. Otherwise,
Then again, we have rounding up. We have to look at this security implication of these issues.
Okay.
Because when it comes to, you see, some like somebody pointed out, the Chinese it's easy to commit doing transactions that could not be tracked, mostly elitist funds with the Chinese government compared with the U.S. government that will raise the red light and say, look, we don't understand why this fund is coming. But with China, there seems to be, it's all for business. So we really need to look at that.
Like there's a $6 billion loan set aside by the Chinese on, they've said when we come up with the projects that we want to fund, like the railway and all of that, they will begin to.
So we should look at that, especially the term of illegal funding to China, and that could not be a means whereby people now begin to do money laundering.
And you won't be able to siphon a naira to China because they will cut off your head.
Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO, Asha Dynamic Solution, thank you so much for coming.
Always
And
a pleasure
Dr.
being
Dan
here.
Ekere of the University of Lagos, thank you so much for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you for the privilege.
Right. Okay. Let's go on a break.
Yes, indeed. And when we come back, it will be time for the news updates. Sarah will be here to give you that. Right after that, we'll discuss other important issues before us. Stay with us.